Hi, I'm Charlie White. I'm pretty excited about today's video because I'm going to show you a trick that I think is an absolute hidden gem. Nobody seems to know about it. It's how to obtain a secure fixing into plasterboard when you've got steel just above the plasterboard. So what's different about what I'm going to show you today? Well, I'm going to tell you now. I'm not putting a wall plug into the plasterboard. I'm not putting a wall plug into the steel. I'm simply drilling through the plasterboard into the steel with a small diameter drill bit and then putting a normal screw self-tapped through the steel to create a really secure fixing. Now, what's really clever about this is you do not need self-tapping screws to do this. You just need to make sure that your screw is 0.5 of a millimeter wider than the drill bit. The reason I know about this is because in my day job I run a curtain business. We do a lot of curtain fittings, and quite often we come along on site to a job where there's been a curtain track or a roller blind that's fallen down, and the reason for that is the person who's put it up has hit something when they've drilled through the plasterboard. Rather than trying to drill through the steel, they've put a little red raw plug into the plasterboard. This is next to hopeless because it doesn't take much weight to pull the wall plug out of the plasterboard. Okay, today's toolkit, I've got my HSS drill bit, which is actually a DeWalt. I find these pretty good. Doesn't have to be DeWalt, can be any brand, but make sure it's a good quality drill bit and make sure it's new. The drill bit has to be sharp. Now, the second important thing in today's toolkit is the relationship between the size of the drill and the size of the screw. This is a 4mm drill bit. The screws I'm using today are 4.5 millimeters. Now, you might have 3mm drill. If that's the case, your screws have to be 3.5 millimeters. Whatever you do, make sure that your screw is only 0.5 of a millimeter wider than the drill. Why is this so important? Well, because if the screw is any wider than 0.5 of a millimeter than the drill bit, it will get caught in the steel and you might end up snapping it. You can probably just about see here, when you hold the drill up against the screw thread just projects slightly past the edge of the drill bit. That's what you want, because it's those tiny little projections of the screw past the edge of the drill bit which are going to self-tap into the steel. Okay, so let's get started. This won't take long because it's so simple. As you can see here, I've created a mock-up in my garage. Got a great big steel in the middle of the room, and I've clamped a little bit of plasterboard below the steel. I put these two planks of wood sandwiched between the steel and the plasterboard to simulate the gap that you often find in this situation when you're drilling through plasterboard and you hit steel. Okay, 4mm drill bit in the drill, and we're going to start drilling up into the steel. Okay, through the plasterboard and into the steel. It's important when you do this to have your drill, if it has speed settings, make sure it's set on the lowest speed. Don't put too much pressure on the drill bit. If it's a new sharp drill bit, it will do its job. Don't rush it because you're blunting the drill bit. Okay, the drill is now through the steel. We've got our screw, put a curtain trap bracket underneath the screw. We insert it into the steel and then we slowly start screwing the screw in. I'm using a manual screwdriver here because I get a much better feel for the tension of the screw with a manual screwdriver. If you've got the right screw and the right drill bit, the screw will progress through the steel quite happily. If, on the other hand, as you're screwing the screw in, it stops abruptly and then you can feel the screw starting to flex a bit because it's not progressing into the steel, stop doing that, because if you overscrew it, you might snap it off. Your screw in this situation is obviously not 0.5 of a millimeter wider than the drill bit, it's obviously more than that. So then you need to take the screw out and either drill a slightly wider hole or find a different screw. Okay, you can see clearly the screw appearing out of the top of the steel, and once it gets through, suddenly it becomes easier to screw because the thread has self-tapped all the way through the steel. You can see just how strong this fixing is because it's starting to lift the plasterboard up towards the steel. So if you're installing this in your own home with a newly plastered ceiling, just be really careful when you get it tight to the ceiling, because otherwise you'll end up cracking your plasterboard. And there you have it. It really is that simple. But it's a trick that nobody else seems to be employing at the moment, because whenever somebody encounters a steel, they just seem to put a fixing in, and of course you've only got the strength of the plasterboard, so it's never going to be strong enough to hold something really heavy. Whereas this is so strong, I can even hang on it! So let me know what you think in the comment section below this video, and if you found it useful, please click on the like button below. And finally, if you're new to my channel, I'd love to have you subscribe. You can do that by clicking on the link here.